All right, so for more than 100 years, we've basically tried to figure out the mind by just listing symptoms. But what if that's totally the wrong approach? Like trying to understand a hurricane by counting every single raindrop. Today, we're going to dive into a completely different map for mental health, one that doesn't see our minds as a collection of broken parts, but as this amazing, complex, interconnected system. Let's do it. Okay, so let's just start with this one really fundamental question. If you break your arm, right, you get an x-ray, and boom, you can see the break. It's obvious. But there's no x-ray for anxiety. There's no blood test for depression. So why? Why is the mind so incredibly different? Because if we can get a handle on that question, it unlocks a whole new way of looking at mental health. And this slide, this really gets to the heart of the problem. Think about it. A diagnosis like appendicitis is etiological. That's a fancy word, but it just means it points directly to the cause, right? An infected appendix, simple. But then you look at a psychiatric diagnosis, the kind you get from the DSM, it's purely descriptive. It's literally just a checklist of symptoms, a list of what you're feeling. So it tells us that you're struggling, for sure, but it gives us zero clues as to why. It's like it's describing the shadow on the wall in perfect detail, but it never ever shows us the object that's casting it. Yeah, this quote really forces us to zoom out, to think bigger. For so long, the search has been for that one depression gene or that one anxiety chemical. But maybe we've been missing the forest for the trees this whole time. This idea suggests that our thoughts, our feelings, they're what you call emergent properties. It's a cool concept. Think of it like this. Wetness isn't a property of a single H2O molecule, right? It only emerges when you have a whole bunch of them together. It's the same with the brain. Your mood isn't hiding in one single neuron. It emerges from this incredibly complex, coordinated dance of the entire system. So to get a handle on all this complexity, scientists came up with this really beautiful metaphor. They call it the state space. Just imagine a vast, invisible landscape inside your head. And every single point on that landscape, that's a unique state your brain can be in. A single, specific pattern of all your neurons firing at one moment. It's basically a map of every possible thought, every feeling, every sensation you could ever experience. And here's where it gets really personal, because that landscape, it's not static, not at all. It's constantly being shaped and sculpted by your life. The process is called experience-dependent plasticity. Every single conversation you have, every new skill you learn, every memory you make, it's literally physically carving new paths and valleys into that landscape. It's building the one-of-a-kind mental map that is you. Okay, so if we zoom in on this landscape, we can see some really cool features. You've got these deep valleys, which scientists call attractors. These are your habits, your strong memories, the really well-worn pathways of your thinking. Then you have the peaks, the high points. Those are repellers, states your brain actively tries to avoid. And what about your actual train of thought? Well, imagine it's a ball just rolling across this whole terrain. It gets pulled down into the valleys, pushed away from the peaks, just constantly moving from one state to the next. So that brings us to the big question, right? If a healthy mind is this flexible, well-formed landscape, then what does mental illness look like in this new model? What happens when the whole system starts to break? Well, this new framework suggests that maybe, just maybe, we can stop trying to memorize hundreds of different disorders, and instead, we can focus on just 3 fundamental ways that the entire system can go wrong. They call them globalopathies, which basically means illnesses of the whole brain landscape. So you've got problems with the map itself, problems with the pathways on the map, and problems with how things move across that map. Let's break each one down. Okay, first up, networkpathies. This is what happens when the landscape itself, the brain's fundamental map of reality, is, well, it's distorted, it's malformed. It's like you're trying to navigate a city with a map that's just wrong, constantly leading you down dead ends. This is often shaped by things that happen early in our development, and it can lead to those really ingrained, long-term patterns of behavior we usually call personality disorders. Next, number 2, we have connectivopathies. Now, in this case, the map itself might be totally fine. The problem is the connections, the pathways between different areas. It's like the roads and bridges on our map are starting to crumble and fall apart. And When crucial parts of the brain can't talk to each other properly, what you get is a really fragmented experience of reality. You get those disorganized thoughts, the jumbled perceptions that we see in psychosis. And third, we have entropies. This one isn't about the map or the roads. It's all about the movement. It's about that little rolling ball, our train of thought. In depression, what happens? That ball gets stuck. It rolls into a deep, dark valley and it just can't get out. You're trapped in rigid, repetitive, negative thinking. And in mania, it's the exact opposite. The ball is bouncing uncontrollably, chaotically, all over the landscape. The system's dynamics have become either totally stuck or completely out of control.
Okay, so if these are the real problems, these big system-level failures, how on earth could we actually diagnose them? How do we finally create that X-ray for the mind that we were talking about at the very beginning?
Well, the proposed answer is a really fascinating new tool called clinical brain profiling, or CBP for short. And the whole idea here is to finally stop just describing the shadows and to start mapping the system itself, to create a really specific profile of how your individual brain dynamics are working or not working. So instead of just a checklist of symptoms, you'd get a clinical brain profile that pinpoints the exact dynamic problem. For instance, if the profile shows widespread disconnectivity, broken pathways, that points strongly toward psychosis. If it shows de-optimization, which is just a technical way of saying the system is stuck in a really deep, low-energy rut, well, that points to depression. Every condition could have its own unique dynamic signature. And this, right here, this is the whole game. This is the fundamental shift. The goal is to change the most important question in psychiatry. We stop asking, what symptoms do you have? And we start asking, which brain dynamic is malfunctioning? It's a total shift from just describing what's wrong to understanding how it's going wrong. And look, if you have a new way to diagnose, that means you need a whole new way to treat. The old way often feels like trial and error, doesn't it? Like you're just fumbling with a giant ring of keys, trying to find one that fits a lock you can't even see. This new approach is about getting a detailed blueprint of that lock first, so we can design the perfect key, the right intervention to retune the specific brain dynamic that has gone haywire. So what would these brain tuning tools even look like? I mean, the possibilities here are genuinely amazing. We're talking about things like neuromodulation, using magnets, like with TMS, to directly reach in and rebalance the activity in faulty brain circuits. Or imagine supercharging talk therapy by combining it with medications that actually boost plasticity, making the brain more flexible and ready to change. We could even use virtual reality to create custom-built immersive worlds where a person could safely practice remapping their own distorted mental landscape. It's incredible stuff. So we end up right back where we started, with a brand new map for the human mind. And it leaves us with this one big question. What if the future of mental health isn't about finding the right label to stick on someone, but about learning how to restore the right balance within the system? It suggests a future where we stop just patching up symptoms and we start empowering the brain to actually heal itself. And that is a really profound and, I think, a really hopeful way to look at it. Thanks for digging into this with us.